I was interested in Bowdoin College, which, as you may know, is a small, suitably ivy-covered institution on the coast of Maine. I graduated routinely from the college, and 4 days later, a gentleman came around the campus with a dark blue jacket and light blue pants and a red stripe, and that did it. I was in the United States Marine Corps. I joined the 1st Marine Division, commissioned just before Pearl Harbor, landed on August 7th in a strange place called Guadalcanal, and there it all began.
When Everett Pope first joined the Marine Corps, he had never even heard of Guadalcanal. But scant months later, he and his Marine company were experts in jungle warfare. They were fast learners, and they would need every ounce of experience they could muster for the danger that lay ahead on the small, embattled island of Peleliu in the South Pacific.
We landed and took an airfield. Of course, that's what we did for a living, was capture airfields. And then the problem we had was taking the rest of the island. Well, first of all, it was 115 degrees. The terrain is simply a jumble of coral, caves, hills, rough terrain, as rough as you can imagine it. And the Japanese had used their years on that island to get ready for this attack, to fortify very skillfully. I landed with a rifle company of about 235 men. By the time 4 days later we got to the foot of that hill, there were about 90 of us left, so we had taken some very serious casualties. Your riflemen are gone, you're using cooks and bakers and company clerks to try to do things that they're not trained to do. And we first tried to reach the foot of the hill through one of the swamps that the guns were firing at us from across the swamp, and we couldn't get through there. So we were in a big mess and we had to be smoked out. They fired smoke shells to cover us, and then we pulled back. And then we were ordered to take the hill. It was still daylight when we went up. We moved up against terrible odds as best we could, because we knew the only way we could stop all of this was to get to the top. We received terrible fire across the canyon from our rear, a cannon fire, and as we came around the hill, we then exposed ourselves to fire from another direction. We knew we had to get to the top, and we did.
With a force of invisible Japanese hidden in the jagged coral caves above them, Pope and his men, still reeling from 4 days of constant fighting, rallied toward the crest of the hill, only to be trapped and outnumbered as they neared the top.
When we got to the top, we were quite startled when we realized that we were not on top of a hill. We were on a plateau with high ground dominating it really to the south. And the Japanese were able to fire down at us, which is not a good tactical position to be in at all. Well, we ran out of ammunition up there. No one could get up there to supply us. We had few grenades, we had some bayonets, we had some brave Marines. We held that hill overnight, trying to keep, in some way, protect the troops that were below us, and it sort of turned into a brawl, which you roll a hunk of rock down amongst the enemy, and they stop for a minute to see if that's a grenade coming in, bouncing in among them, and it just slows them down a little bit. Then after you've done that 2 or 3 times, you throw a real grenade, one of the few you have left, and that gets their attention. So that was just a mechanism that we used to try to hold them off a little bit. As daylight came, the Japanese formed up we could see it coming, a very heavy attack of 50 or 100 men. And we were at that point ordered to withdraw at about the same time I decided we were going to get out of there anyhow. And so we came tumbling down the hill. There were 8 of us at that point. The hill was not taken again for about 10 or 11 or 12 days. And it took that long for my dead on that hill to be buried. A lot of brave Marines died on that hill. I can never forget it.
The battle for Peleliu Island raged on for 6 more weeks at the cost of over 12,000 American and Japanese lives. It is regarded as one of the most vicious and costly actions of the Pacific Campaign. Just 6 months later, in recognition of his leadership on that treacherous front, Captain Pope was summoned to the White House to receive the Medal of Honor.
When I talk, as once in a while I do to youngsters in a school, and I can see the little 7th grader sitting there, and he leans forward and he says, "Mr. Pope, were you scared when you went up the hill?" My answer, perhaps will answer your question. I tell him I was scared to death. I had half the Japanese army shooting at you from 3 different sides. Of course you were scared. But your responsibility is to do what you've been trained to do, which is to lead Marines in action. It doesn't matter whether you're scared or not. It's your ability to do your duty even though you may be afraid that is a real facet of leadership. So that's what I hope that I did, was I did my duty to the Marine Corps and to the Marines whom I was privileged to lead, even though we may have been frightened. I was not a hero, but I was among heroes. I mean that very sincerely.